Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Astro-Tarot forecast. I'm Millie, and I'm here with Susheela, and we are here to talk about the June 2024 forecast. So we want to get started with recapping that first week of June, and then we'll move into day by day. But I think that June really started off with a bang. We had the newly Jupiter in Gemini, the newly entered Jupiter in Gemini created trine to Pluto immediately. Mercury went into its home sign of Gemini on June 3rd, and it's remaining there till June 17th. And then that Mercury creating that trine to Pluto. So all of these connections from Gemini to Pluto almost immediately to me feels like the introduction of this era of air that we're moving into. And that to me has different layers. And I think that because we have never experienced Gemini energy touch a Pluto and Aquarius in that way, all of this is very new.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have noticed that people are, I mean, even within myself, like in new ideas, a new way of seeing things, I think that some people are having some trouble, really shifting that perspective because air energy moves very quickly. And when we're talking about planets like Jupiter and Pluto, those two planets in the zodiac actually get along really well and they support one another really well. Jupiter is about growth and expansion, and Pluto is about the attainment of something, usually of power, right? And so when we're talking about these two together, they support one another. And so there is a shift in, I think that there's a shift in the collective consciousness that is starting with as it does, but I think we're beginning to really see how it affects us individually. And I think we're being invited to look at things differently. I mean, and to follow that, we had a Sun-Venus conjunction in Gemini. We had the new moon in Gemini. And then, of course, we had the Gemini squares to Saturn and Pisces. So that's a packed week. Every single day almost had something going on. So I wouldn't be surprised if that first week of June for people felt what I like to call retrogrady. I think it had this like retrogrady type of feel.
Yes. And that was like the first question you asked me. So how did it feel? Has it felt a little retrograde? And we've had the internet stop and, all sorts of things happen. And we were talking before I hit record about last month. I mentioned the universe might be, smacking you on the hand. It's like no gentle nudging at this point. Things
Hmm.
that you were thinking or you're overthinking or you're mulling over, the universe is just like pushing you up to the precipice and knocking you off like flap,
Hmm.
flap.
Hmm.
That's not good for you. This isn't good for you. That's not the right way. Okay, you're thinking, you're planning, you're being logical, all of that very airy stuff.
Right.
There's these aspects that are just like, no, no. So we've got some of the interesting cards that show up like these two together. We've got the 10 of wands and the 3 of cups together, which it is hilarious to me because it's kind of like I remember seeing this meme on Instagram where there's a little baby and it says like, this is how my week is going, and the little baby is like crying and then like kind of laughing. Kind of and these two things together, it's like I am so exhausted, I can't take it anymore, into fits of laughter. I am so exhausted. This is horrible. My life is upside down. And then it's like, what else could go wrong? Ha 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 ha. Laughing all together and then going, oh, I'm gonna do very practical things. I'm gonna think and I'm gonna plan and I'm gonna work and I'm gonna check all the boxes. And then whatever the universe is like. Just this past weekend, we have the Tower, and then we also have the King of Wands. And the King of Wands is like, I want to do everything my way. My way is the correct way, and I'm going to follow through, and I'm going to set all the things, and I'll research it, and what could go wrong? And the Tower comes along. And that this energy of the Hermit, so for our weekly tarot card was a Thursday. And so this card specifically I had for Venus and Gemini squaring Saturn and Pisces on Saturday. And so it's interesting to me that that is synchronistic, that it's in alignment
Mhm.
with that. And it's a major arcana. And I think really the whole beginning of June has this vibe of the Hermit as a way of mitigating the chaos or the static or the snittiness or the impatience or whatever.
Mm.
And I was mentioning also to you off the recording that the third eye can feel very activated because all of this air energy is about vocalization and self-expression, but it's also this part of
Mhm.
thinking in that creative way. And mine has been, I can feel it as if it's being tickled or magnetized or something, and it's a weird feeling. And so the Hermit, I think, is a bit of a flavor for not just that day, but it's quite an expansive, profound, important energy where, okay, go back to introspection, retreat from the world, peek out. It's a little crazy out there. Yeah, stay inside, and it's okay. Like that's okay. And in that place of introspection, it's also not to just be. We don't want to just be distracting ourselves with stuff so that we can stay bubbly and afloat. It's like, no, come in, unplug, unwind, detach as a way of, bracing yourself maybe for the next batch of stuff. So we're recording this on June 10th, and we can start with the aspects of June 10th then.
And
Yeah.
so one more thing before we begin, everything that took place that first week of June, I mean, pretty much every aspect is active through the entire month of June. So that new moon, the Venus Cazimi, so that Hermit card is, I think, plays a big role throughout the whole month, at least until Venus moves into Cancer. And so pay attention to that and keep that in mind because you want to make sure that you're not just thinking of these astrological events as isolated events. They play a big role for weeks, sometimes months on end. So keep that in mind. So we begin with June 10th, in which Mercury in Gemini is at 14 degrees Gemini, and it's creating a trine to the South Node in Libra and a sextile to the North Node in Aries. So whenever we're talking about the nodes and whenever the nodes are activated, particularly by a personal planet like Mercury, we're talking about, in this case, our thoughts, Mercury, kind of we are noticing the karma of our thoughts. This to me felt very much like your thoughts create your reality. But here's, but I think that because the nodes are involved, it also has to do with past lives. It has to do with like soul evolution. So in this case, it feels like an invitation to take note to what are your dominating thoughts? What are your dominating stories? Where did they come from? This very much feels like generational type of stuff. And how are they manifesting themselves in your very practical everyday world? Because that's what Mercury and Gemini represents. And I think this is a great observation to have throughout the week of the 10th, because Mercury is actually really active that whole week.
So we've got an interesting, we got a little turtle there, and our knight on the turtle presenting this coin. Practical matters. So impatience and patience, like that. on a certain level, I think we're wanting things to move at a certain pace, whatever that pace is.
Mm-hmm.
That pace, the universe is going, nope, not quick enough. And then certain other things we're going, okay, universe, come on, I've been doing this. Can you get it together already? And the universe is going, no, you're not ready. It's going to take this amount of time. And
Right.
so we're we're kind of thrown off
Mm-hmm.
what the, what the right pace is for everything. Things we want fast, they're supposed to go slow. Things that are supposed to go slow, we want them fast. It's been like a whole lifetime already. However old you are, you're going like, it's been going on for 104 years. Like, when is it going to happen? So the knights are personal cards. Usually the pages represent Mercury more because they're messengers, whereas the knights are champions of their suit. I say that all the time. But I think in this case, it is very much like we're trying to we're trying to take the high road. We're trying to like rise above the stuff. And I mean, it's just funny because he's not on a horse. Usually they're on horses. Um, and this like sense of pride, like it just kind of makes me laugh because he's like coming in on a turtle of all things, you know? And they're very chivalrous, and they're next to the king, you know, they protect all of these ideals and thought processes, and in this case material things, so our stability, our wealth, our home, our structures, our belief systems, like those foundational things. And it's like you can imagine yourself riding in on something as slow as a turtle proudly. I mean, it's ridiculous, really. And yet somehow we have to work through that. Like
Mm-hmm.
there, it's almost like a chance to look at our own absurdity for what it is. Like that's how it feels to me anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think, I mean, what you're saying feels also like we are in a space, and I think that we are redefining time and space, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so that feeling off, that feeling of the retrograde, us trying to figure out when to do it, when not to do it, when to move forward, when to hold back. I think we are the perception of time, I think, is really being skewed with here. And that South Node in Libra, if we're talking about that, and if we're talking strictly on air terms, is what is your relationship with time?
Yeah, what do you think should happen?
Mm-hmm.
When you should happen? I should be something something by now.
Mm-hmm.
That's too quick. That's not in the
Right.
timeline. It's like whatever. Like the universe is
Right.
just going. I'm calling the shots here. All you need to do is go when it's green, stop when it's red, and pay very close attention when it's yellow, and that's it.
Right.
And
Right.
for some reason we're making it very complicated.
Speaking of complicated, on June 11th, we have Mars in Taurus at 2 degrees square Pluto in Aquarius. So if we're talking about this is this is not an easy aspect. This is like being stuck between a rock and a hard place through our own doing, through our own volition. This is Mars and Taurus that moves very, very slowly. And a square, which is an aspect of tension, which is an aspect of not really knowing what to do, feeling stuck to Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto in Aquarius representing kind of like this future ideal, but we really can't picture that ideal because Pluto in Aquarius is so new.
Mm.
And these two coming at tension with one another can feel like I want this to move faster, and it's not. And so these two are fixed signs. So within you, it can feel like a few things. One, I want this to move faster and I don't know how. So I feel stuck. I feel very angry, but not outward anger. It's kind of um, like it's simmering inside. Um, this can also be if you are in a situation like this with someone else, not being able to, for both people to meet halfway. This
Mhm.
is not. an aspect that lends itself for amicable terms right now. Everyone's kind of sinking in their heels. In the highest expression, Mars and Taurus asks, what are your day-to-day tasks?
Mm.
And the square to Pluto is, do you understand that when you show up on your day-to-day tasks, that pressure, that tension, you're creating momentum for when those two planets are no longer in tension with one another for something to come through. For that Pluto and Aquarius vision that is so new, you can't fully envision to actually come to fruition. So I think the fact that Mars just moved into Taurus and this is like one of its first aspects sets the tone for what Mars and Taurus represents the rest of the month.
Mm. Well, I have an interesting card for that, and I'll explain first. It's less about the reality of what's happening and a
Hmm.
little bit more on how do we navigate that? Like, what do I focus on in the middle of a tornado?
Yeah. Hmm.
So I have the Four of Wands, which is, there's a lot of different symbolism in the Four of Wands. It can be four corners like a bed. It can be four corners of a house. It can be an 1111, like seeing it.
Hmm.
There is a balanced energy there, but there's something very intangible about it. So when we think of the progression of wands, wands are fiery, they're passionate. Um, the ace is like the spark. It's a very masculine energy. It's phallic. It's like the initiation of that life force. And then we move into the two, and the two is like planning to plan. And then the three is actually planning something, like I'm planning to go into the water. I'm not packing my swimsuit and surfboard at home. Like I'm actually there ready to do the thing. We get to the four, and it's almost, it leaps forward into this envisioning what the happily ever after could be.
Hmm.
And so with it, there's still, it's still fire, it's still passionate, it's still balanced, but it's kind of like we have to remind ourselves of that. Like, how do I bring it back into that? How I tap into the passionate creative part versus the passionate, angry, fearful throwing plates part. Like, they're two sides of the same coin, but it's like to remember how to channel that. And I think it's a little extra challenging at the moment to
Yeah.
to do that, to bring that back into balance and harmony. It's like, because it's a new, oh, this is not the balance and harmony that I'm used to, and the universe is going, oh, glad you're paying attention.
Right. And why? No, it's not. Right. Which takes us so beautifully into June 12th with Mercury in Gemini, square Saturn and Pisces, both at 19 degrees, keeping in mind that Saturn is stationed ready to go retrograde a few days later. So this matters because, again, here's a square of a personal planet, Mercury, to an outer planet, Saturn. And on June 11th, we had that Mars, personal planet Mars to Pluto, outer planet. So the outer planets are always going to represent what seems like an outer force that is greater than us, right? And so the personal planets are sometimes they're just very primal reactions, are very primal reactions to life, right? Um, Especially when something feels bigger than us. Mercury and Gemini, I think, first off, Mercury and Gemini is in its home sign. So thoughts are going to be flowing. For some people, this is very enjoyable. In terms of creativity, I have a lot of downloads, writing a lot, painting a lot, creating a lot, collaborating, talking about future projects. All of this is great, especially with a square to Saturn, because In that case, there's an understanding we're just throwing ideas right now. We're brainstorming right now. And the square to Saturn is saying, but we're not really looking to do anything with this or launch this or put this out in the world either towards the end of the year, or I'm even thinking like spring of 2025. Okay. Now, I think that at a very personal level, this can represent the not knowing what to do or feeling stuck within the self. Thoughts just, I don't know which direction to go. I thought things were going to turn out this way, but they're not. And it can feel like I can't get this wrong. I can't get this right.
Hmm.
And I think another thing that this brings is a certain level of awareness. So if you're like, okay, I have this, I'm going after this thing. I keep applying for jobs. I have a good feeling, but none of them are landing. I think it brings a certain level of awareness of, okay, I can appreciate that this isn't happening right now, and that's okay. But is there something within me that's blocking that manifestation?
Hmm.
So there's a lot of ways of looking at this in true Gemini fashion. And you kind of have to give yourself the permission to choose which one feels right for you, as opposed to all of these things being true at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
which then they might be also in different, just to add
Mhm.
layers to everything, in a certain
Right.
aspect of your life, it's one, and then the other, and all of those things are
Right.
stacked on top of each other. So another wand, I've got the Page of Wands here, and this feels like that conflict of, okay, in reality, I have to be responsible. I don't want to be the youthful adventurer. That sounds lovely. The Page of Wands, he goes out into nature and explores and uncovers things. That's great. If I'm 7 and my parents are paying for all my bills and I don't have to do anything at summer vacation. But the universe is saying you have to embody that
Mhm.
because nothing else is happening in this space,
Mm.
and it's difficult for us with that Saturn. I mean, it is very much like that Saturn square cube floating around in Pisces.
Right.
We've got this Mercury in Gemini. Everything's talkative and airy and conceptual and whatever, and yet we want to go like, but I want results, I want dollar signs, I want things that I can measure and calculate. And there's this little boy in the woods, chasing butterflies. Hard to reconcile those things, like, you
Yeah.
know it's
It is
not
hard to,
yeah.
yeah, it is hard to reconcile. And I think that a great way to, anytime there's a square to an outer planet, because the outer planets will always represent a challenge. They, and it's just one of those lessons in life. And so if you can look at it as, think of the, I don't know, the rejection as a reroute, right? And what are you learning from that? That's a really great way of really moving through some of these things, especially this week. Because on June 13th, we have a Sun Mercury conjunction at 22 degrees Gemini. So, whenever we have a Sun Mercury conjunction, it is the Sun illuminating Mercury. So, the Sun brings light, something to light. I think that these squares, and that's the square, squares are like the pressure that a diamond goes through before becoming a diamond, right? That's the square. So there's something here that we're being asked to look at, especially if we're meeting dead ends.
Mm,
We're being asked to be curious, open-minded, and new at something, kind of feeling like we're being new at life too, how to do life, how to approach it, the expectations we have of it, all Gemini energy. And the squares to the big planets are, no, not this way, because that's what you thought you wanted. That's what you thought a few months ago. So the Sun Mercury conjunction, again, it's active really for about another week until the solstice. It's about what are you realizing about yourself? What are you realizing about why the things that are seemingly blocked
Mhm.
are not coming to you. But there has to be curiosity in the process of your consciousness and you processing your own consciousness. Because as much as this is Gemini, which is just cognitive thought, I think this is an invitation to get very curious about the consciousness that is us.
Mhm. Well, this was actually our card of the week a couple weeks ago. So the Six of Cups. And there is a reflective energy in there, but it's also about the past and it's also about nostalgia. And it can be this on a negative side, it can be sort of wallowing in that, well, I didn't think it was going to turn out this way.
Mhm.
If I knew that, or I should have done this, or focused on missed opportunities or mistakes or whatever, instead of looking at it as a learning thing, going, I should, I should have done my learning by now.
Right. Hmm.
It's kind of like therapy. I saw something again on Instagram, the source of all knowledge. Um, and it was a woman saying, "Oh, I've been in therapy for 12 years or something like that." And the person said, "Oh, I guess you need a new therapist because they can't be very good if you've been seeing them." And she says, "Well, no, it's like an ongoing thing. Like it's
Right.
not something that you're done with. Like
Right.
you keep doing this." And that's kind of what this feeling is of like looking back, this nostalgic thing of looking back where I was, where I am, instead of going, "Oh, I still have that far to go to the thing that I want, the person I want to be, the things I want to have, whatever," instead of looking at like, "Oh my gosh, I've done all of this,
Hmm.
and I'm only whatever, 29, like I've done like 150 years worth of stuff." Like, you know, and that perception, and it can sound like, okay, we're sugarcoating it a little bit, but it is to like reframe. Everything is getting reframed. Like our entire, like everything we knew about everything is
Hmm.
getting reframed. And I think that's the Pluto and Aquarius thing. So on all these other levels, it's like it filters down into the day to day. Oh, you thought 1 + 1 is 2. Well, no, it's bananas, actually. Whatever. And it's like, whew, mind blown. And so if that's happening on that level, imagine how that translates into everything else. Like,
Hmm.
I was a kid in the 70s. I never dreamed that we would have like cell phones with pictures on them. Like it's like beyond like
Right.
even Star Trek didn't have, it was like big clunky buttons. Like, it was their version of the future. And we look at where we really are, it's like phenomenal. And we can look at it like, yeah, there's a downside. Maybe AI and a lot of other things are running. It's very Gemini stuff, like all this technology. But on another level, it's really cool. Like it's really impressive. And it's like, wow, we did that. Humans did this. So,
Hmm.
that perception, and I think that relaxing the sixes are all generally balanced energy. But do we sit in that like sad place of reflection, or we sit in that
Right.
place of like appreciation and reflection and like, yeah, it's a bit of, and still that hermit, there is a bit of a hermity vibe going on in this particular card, and the going into that well, into that deep place, which is kind of like, it can be like the rabbit hole. It can also be people showing up from the past,
Hmm.
poking, pressing on the triggers and the everything else. So
Yeah, and one more thing about that Sun Mercury conjunction is the last time we had a Sun Mercury conjunction was back in April when Mercury was retrograde in Aries and it met with the Sun in Aries. So you want to follow those cycles because Mercury was retrograde then, it's direct now. So what have you learned between April and now? What is becoming clear? How have you changed your mind? How has your perspective changed on certain things? That is really what this is about, you know? So on June 15th and 16th, we have Venus and Gemini at 29 degrees create a square to Neptune and Pisces. I think on the one hand, this is a great weekend for a lot of creativity, lots of meditation, yoga, being out in nature type of energy. Because it's Venus and Gemini, you probably want to do this, with a few friends, get together, um, and either create some kind of soul circle. This is lovely energy for that type of connection. On the other hand, Venus square Neptune is, disconnecting and not in the healthiest way. So dissociating, distracting yourself. Um, because of the week leading up to that, I think comes with a lot of either truths or downloads or frustrations that you're just like, I'm tired. I just want to check out. And Venus square Neptune is checking out energy, but just be mindful of how you exercise that. I think another thing we want to keep in mind is that from now on, any planet in any sign that creates a connection to Neptune and Pisces, that dinging of Neptune and Pisces, which is the last degree of the zodiac altogether, is this is changing.
Mm.
So this is Venus and Gemini. So what is your relationship to your thoughts? How are you communicating with yourself? What are your thoughts around relationships? What are your thoughts around making money? The square to Neptune and Pisces is how you do these things is changing. How you
Oh.
do these things is changing. That's why that weekend is so great for meditative practices that can bring downloads, that can actually bring answers to any of the things that may have come up throughout the week.
Hmm. It makes me think of, the more you know, the less you know.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, it's like we might as well just go, I know nothing. Like, I know nothing. I know how to access email. I know how to boil an egg, make my coffee. Like, other than that, I know nothing. Like, might as well just wipe the whole slate clean.
Mm-hmm.
So, interestingly, we have the Nine of Cups. The Nine of Cups is about abundance. We've got this like ever flowing fountain here with this little happy fish on it, very Piscean energy. Typically, we're going, there is no downside to this card, but there is this energy of escapism and hedonism and just overindulgence. And so, yeah, there is a downside to abundance, and shifting that value system of like, I want, I'm not having, I'm not getting. Then there's like a desperation. Then there's a, like, when you finally are able to get it, if you're finally able to focus on something, there's like a letting go, and then like a, well, I just gonna like everything, you know, like the gluttony aspect, which we typically don't associate, but it's like everything building up this month feels like there's like, we're prone to thinking about the lack, what we don't have, what we didn't get, why was that person mean, or I should have, like, whatever, all of those things are surfacing, allowing us to go, okay, well, what's the opposite of that? But
Mm-hmm.
the universe is not letting me have the opposite of it. Why?
Yeah.
And then, so then you get a little bit of something, and then it's like overindulgence,
Mm-hmm.
because and that's what often happens when, you think about that experiment, with the marshmallows back in the day, where kids were, sharing. They could either steal the marshmallow or whatever. If they waited, they could get two or
Okay.
more or whatever it was. And the early analysis of that was not quite accurate. And what it was showing, as we've learned over time, is that when you're not used to having your needs met,
Mm.
and something shows up, you take it right away. It's not about not wanting to share, or all of those other moral things that were on it. It was coming from that place of lack, and so something shows up, well, we eat it. You have 6 kids in the family, and it's like the food sits on the table, and it's devoured like in no time, because if you wait, it will be gone. And so that's like the downside of this abundance, not true abundance, but it's like how we're kind of like conditioned to it. It's like, oh my gosh, something's come in. Oh, like, and then it's just gone. Or I need to feel good right now because everything's so crappy.
Mm-hmm.
So it can go in that self-indulgent, escapist kind of way.
Oh, that's so interesting because that's, you know, talk about processing and talking about whether our needs have been met or not. On June 17th, we have both Venus and Mercury entering the sign of Cancer. And Venus enters the sign of Cancer and remains there till July 31st, and Mercury remains there till July 2nd. So here we have these two personal planets, Mercury, cognitive thought, how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive the world, right next to Venus. So this is in a sign like Cancer, this is great because this is in fact about really understanding what our needs are. Cancer represents the archetype of the mother, and coming to the realization that we are our first mother, right? We get to nurture ourselves. We get to give ourselves uh, our needs. We get to provide ourselves with our needs, and not from a place of not needing anyone, but really from a place of love. And so Venus and Mercury walking closely together in the sign of Cancer can have again a lot of aha moments,
Mhm.
uh, a lot of feeling like, oh, this is to your point. I think I need all of these things, but essentially what I'm doing is trying to make up for this, trying to fill this void.
Yeah.
Um, this can also, on a more practical interpretation, these two planets traveling so closely together, this is about uh, potentially with family, great aspect for family, getting together with family, talking to family, or, chosen family, hanging out with chosen family and really talking to them, connecting with them, relating with them. So those are really interesting things. And of course, as the days go on, each of these planets is going to do different things.
Mm. So I took 2 cards for that because it's Venus in Cancer and also Mercury in Cancer. And you talk about the that mother energy of nurturing.
Mm-hmm.
If we didn't learn that in
Mm-hmm.
that way, or maybe in the best way,
Mm-hmm.
that understanding of what that means is still in there. So
Mm-hmm.
it could be faulty. It could be love equals this, nurturing equals this,
Mm-hmm.
and we're undoing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got 2 really nice cards here. We have the sun, which is like warm, wonderful, um, cuddling, nurturing, inspiring. It illuminates everything that it shines on. It makes everything warm. It brings life. It's just a wonderful card. And then the 7 of Pentacles, which is gross. You actually see it's not like momentum, but it's like you've planted seeds, they are growing, you can't rush it. That's not how nurturing works. Like, so we've removed all the stuff that we thought we knew, whether we liked it or not. It got taken from us, erased, thrown out, blown up, whatever. And now we're like, okay, well, I gotta redo this all over again. And these seeds that we planted, not right at this moment, but a little farther back, the universe, the mother, the universe is going, see, the stuff is growing. You
Hmm.
see, those seeds are germinating. You can't have it yet. This is why I took this away. This is why I put that in your way. This is why I put that in its place. This is why I redirected you abruptly so that you could have this and this, which is amazing. So we begin to see the signs of why, but it's not all finished yet.
Right. I think there has to be one of the thing another thing that Gemini season I think is bringing us or inviting us to understand is that it's not so much about the manifestation of the thing we think we need or want. It's so much about who we're becoming in the process. And I think that's why so much of those connections to Pisces are about understand that this is about who you're becoming or who you're remembering you are at a soul level, right?
Yeah.
And when with Pisces, it's like this is the part of your egoic identity that you're dissolving. And so when we can understand that, I think that when we can begin to see this life through the lens of this consciousness, the limitlessness that exists within us, then we understand that everything is happening exactly as it should. So this Cancer energy actually does feel very nurturing. We're not trying to rush an energy that is not meant to be rushed. An energy like Cancer is truly meant to be felt and experienced. So that takes us to June 20th. So the Sun in Gemini squares Neptune in Pisces at 29 degrees, both of them. Again, the Sun representing our identity, our ego, in Gemini. What are our thoughts about that? How do we perceive ourselves? What do we believe? What have we believed thus far is our role in this life? And the square to Neptune in Pisces is the dissolution of that. We're like, get rid of that. That is not who you are. That is not what you came here to do. And then on that same day, right after the Sun in Gemini connects with Neptune in Pisces, it moves into the sign of Cancer, and we start the solstice,
Hmm.
the Cancer solstice, which is in itself a new beginning. So here we have, at this point, Venus, Mercury, and the Sun moving into the sign of Cancer and and asking, what do you need right now? You've been through quite the Gemini season. What kind of TLC do you need right now?
Well, it's kind of funny because on the 20th, so I have two cards for that, and then on the 21st, I have two cards for that, which we'll get to in a moment. But there's also they're only a day apart, and as we always saying, those energies aren't just like boom encapsulated for one day. They
Right.
blend, and so it's you will see how interesting those blend over the days. But for the 20th, I've got the King of Swords and the Page of Cups. Really kind of funny energy to have together, but it is what we're saying. This is the and it's interesting that we're blending, we're going from an air sign into a water sign. So we're going from Gemini swords, he is like the king of Gemini, really, moving into cups, Cancer.
Mm.
So those pages we're very like we're having adverse reactions to that page energy because the universe keeps going like, but you need to be playful and you need to be spontaneous and you need to be, see things from a beginner's mind and remember who you were as a child. And the other part of us is going, screw that, I'm supposed to be responsible and I'm supposed to be doing things and I've got stuff to do and things, and whatever. So that page is probably the most childlike, the most living in that dreamy space of, when you think of, I mean, I would say not my own children, but you've seen, no, I'm kidding. But you've seen kids that they're just like the sweetest. Now that I'm saying this, it sounds horrible, but they've all encapsulated that. My kids are all grown, but there's those moments where they are so sweet and innocent and good, and they see things in this way that you're like, that's so funny that you see that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
They're seeing something for the first time. That is the Page of Cups. And it reminds me too, I one time said to my daughter, we were walking and she was zigzagging all over the place and it was making me crazy. And I'm walking with her father and I'm like, can we just walk in a straight line? Because she was like all over the place. And she goes, oh, okay. And she comes and she walks with us so that we're in a straight line. And it was like, I laughed and I'm like, why am I getting her to walk in a straight line anyway? Like, why is that bothering me?
Mhm.
Like, it's ridiculous. And so that's the King of Swords coming in going, no, it needs to be like this, and it needs to be sharp, and it needs to be pointed, and it needs to cut, and it needs to be directed and focused. The other side, if we temper this king with this page, this king then can elevate and sit up there and oversee and look at things and be delighted in the playfulness and the childlike aspects of things. It doesn't mean to be immature or childish or irresponsible. It just means to be open to all of these things while being able to see and plan. And it is also very uh it's a patient king to a point, unless this Page of Cups shows up bratty, but
Mhm.
that's not the message though. So if this was a brat, this king would be, you're grounded,
Mm.
not appealing to any kind of emotion. You
Right.
you did this, you're being bratty, you're grounded, those are the rules, no going back, tough. But
Mhm.
it's not. This is the playful, innocent, wide-eyed, but let's, oh, we walk in a straight line. Well, that sounds fun. And this is like, oh, new ideas, new expansion, but it's sharp and it's witty and it's intellectual
Yeah.
without being boring or dry or grumpy, because those are all aspects of the King of Swords potentially, but it's not that. So imagine being intellectual but playful. Imagine being organized but open.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. I had a Gemini client sometime within the last 2 weeks. Ah, she put it so perfectly. I think she said something around the lines of like, I like flexible organization.
Huh.
You know, like she's someone who likes to plan her week out, but she needs flexibility for it to change. And she's a Gemini, uh, the moon in Capricorn. So she's fulfilling her Capricorn energy of like, okay, I kind of need to know what's going to happen at the week ahead. And then her Gemini is like, well, there's some flexibility, right?
Yeah.
And I just wanted to point out, if you guys think this Gemini season was like, it felt too, woo, just wait till Leo season. We're really gonna move into like, I just want to have fun. I just want to play. And it's going to get along very well with all of that Gemini energy, but we'll get there when we get there. Um, on June 21st, we have Mercury in Cancer create a sextile to to Mars and Taurus. And that is actually an aspect of the first of two full moons in Capricorn. So Mercury in Cancer, sextile Mars and Taurus. This feels like we go from, this can be like, remember 2 weeks ago when I was freaking out about the thing that wasn't happening? Oh, well, I realized it doesn't have to happen that quickly. It's like, it's okay, the world is not gonna end. Mercury in Cancer can really be just speaking to yourself a lot more kindly. One of the things that, as you were explaining those previous two cards, is I wonder how many of us fall into the like the punishing parent in our head, and we punish ourselves in that way, right?
Yeah.
So Mercury in Cancer is really the opportunity to just be kinder, more understanding, more receptive with your own thoughts and where you are. And the sextile to Mars and Taurus, those two energies in the zodiac are very supportive, very like really kind parents.
Mhm.
Like parents that really give like children room to be children and get curious. This is what you get to be to yourself. And the fact that this is an aspect of that first full moon in Capricorn, because the second full moon in Capricorn is going to be about a month later in July. Um, two full moons in Capricorn is there is an ending of the way that things have been done. At an emotional level, full moon, there is an ending of the status quo. So the status quo at a personal level can feel like I used to think I had to do things like that. I used to think that the steps A, B, C, D, I realized that that doesn't work anymore. I think that the more time goes forward, and you just wait till 2025 and 2026, these are not the molds anymore. These are not the tried and true paths anymore. And we really have to get okay with that. And Cancer season is really going to show us more of that.
Yeah. It's okay. A couple of things coming to mind. What you just said reminds me of, you know, our parents taught us things because they had information from their time or their parents' time that they thought they could pass down that would benefit us in the best possible way,
Right.
not knowing that it was possibly even outdated as they were experiencing it. It's kind of like reminds me of high school textbooks. They're already like 20 years in the past. They're not exactly cutting edge of information, but these are the standard things and the way it's done, and that's the way it's always been. No more, right? And so when I said, well, it's kind of interesting because we had that pair of cards there, the King of Swords with the page, and then you mentioned the parents. Well, we've got the Queen of Swords and the Three of Pentacles. So we've got the parents and these things together, which is really interesting. So we have the masculine feminine balancing of this thought process. So the action, not the way I thought I'm supposed to take action. I'm supposed to take action and be playful and open, and well, that's not responsible adulthood. That's not what I was taught. Then we
Mhm.
go into the feminine receptive mother energy. So the Queen of Swords is she is in the positive sense, she's intellectual and witty and wise, good sense of humor, all of that. On the negative side, she can be sharp tongued, bitchy, inconsolable, aggressive, uh, that kind of thing. Uh, the Three of Pentacles is a collaborative card. Previously, that collaboration meant something, something. We might have been burnt in those collaborative arrangements. Now it's saying it's not about the aspect of collaborating, it's about how you collaborate. It's
Mhm.
not that you collaborated that was wrong, or it's not that you joined forces with something that was wrong. It was how or with whom. So the energy of this Queen of Swords, she's always depicted as extremely receptive. She's very receptive, but she's no fool. So she sits there with a sword at the ready. So If something shows up that's stupid, she just goes, no, off with their heads. And that's it. Next. And she feels no way about it. So she's pleasant, delightful, intellectual. There's ideas, all of that stuff, responsibility. They're both very, the king and queen together, very responsible. But with this page of cups and the three of pentacles, it's like the possibilities for expansion and seeing things in ways that you haven't seen them before, and partnering and sharing with things that you maybe thought you never could reach before. With this king and queen pair, it's like all kinds of stuff opens up. Like
Hmm.
the moment you give way to, I actually know nothing, everything I thought I knew is nonsense, and I'm supposed to embrace all this other nonsense. Whatever, fine, you win. All of a sudden, everything opens up. And I shouldn't say all of a sudden, because it doesn't all appear, but it does open up. It opens up to that adventurous life full of abundance and fun and whatever. It just doesn't all land at the same time, which is a
Right.
good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think we underestimate how much it would throw us off to receive all of the things at once.
Yeah,
We don't, I mean, we're barely coming out of the structures, and we're, as a collective, we're having a difficult time with that.
we would so easily slip back into our old ways.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
has to hurt
Mhm.
in order for us to really get it.
Mhm.
You put your hand on the stove and the universe goes like, "Well, that hurt, didn't it?" And then you kind of like, well, it wasn't really on all the way. I want to touch it again, you know. So now the universe is like, it's on max. Put your hand there for a whole second.
Mhm.
Oh, I burnt. Good. You will never forget this. You will never have to do that twice.
Right. On June 26th, we have Mercury in Cancer, sextile Saturn in Pisces. So here we have Mercury in Cancer, which again feels like very intuitive download type of energy. Unlike Mercury in Gemini, where it was just a lot of facts based on, this 3D world, this 3D
Mhm.
reality. I think Mercury in Cancer is much more about, again, going within that internal guidance, that internal unconditional love, going into the heart and and gaining information from there, right? Gaining information, Mercury from Cancer, the unconditional love that exists within. Sextile to Saturn in Pisces, mind you, Saturn is stationed, ready to go retrograde. And I emphasize that because when Saturn's about to go retrograde and there are things that are coming up, Saturn is saying, okay, during my retrograde, you have this space to either play with this or try it out or kind of redo certain things, the foundation of certain things. So let's say that, I don't know, you have some kind of project, some kind of business, something. And with Mercury and Cancer, you start getting all of these different ideas, all of these different downloads. Well, Saturn in Pisces is saying you get to play with this and you kind of get to implement this new information that's coming from a different place
Mm.
uh, during my retrograde. Because there, with Mercury moving into Cancer, I think that there are going to be things that we realize again that will come clear from an intuitive place. That's just not it. That's just not the way.
Yeah, for whatever reason,
Hmm.
and we might not be able to explain it because
Right.
logic has always shown that it was this, and this equals this. And now we're going like, okay, because I know nothing anymore and everything is wrong, everything is the opposite, 1 + 1 = banana. So whatever.
Right.
Perfect card for this is the Eight of Swords, the card of limiting beliefs. This
Mhm.
is the prison that we create for ourselves because we cannot see past our conditioning.
Mhm.
So
Mm.
it is that opportunity to realize that and tear it down.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
essentially what it is. And they're swords, so they're thoughts. They're like they build a wall. It's the glass ceiling. It's the, yeah, but that doesn't happen to people like me. Or this and this and this. Or you're supposed to, whatever. Supposed to, should have, only happens to. All of that nonsense is just
Right.
gone. It's like, yeah, whatever.
Right. That June 28th, we have Venus in Cancer, sextile Mars in Taurus. This is on a Friday, I believe, which is the energy that will be active all weekend. What a great energy. I mean, Venus in Cancer, really, they get along. That's a great placement. It's a very soft placement. Mars and Taurus is just, very steady, very slow. I think it's a great energy for dates that weekend. If it's a first date, it has the potential to feel just very easeful.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, there's nothing like terribly explosive about it, and anything that can get too exciting, and not in the best way. But this is more go with the flow type of energy, and really at a nervous system level in your body feeling like, oh, this feels good. Like slow is better,
Hmm.
better than not.
Yeah, so I have a really nice card for that, which makes total sense. It's the 10 of Cups, and
Mm.
it's always showing like a couple and they're happy, and it's like the happily ever after kind of rosy card, and that is the energy. It's that maybe it's you and a counterpart balancing each other out, or the ability to settle down. You talk about the nervous system, like the nervous system can actually settle after all of that wild energy going on.
Right.
It's like a settled, it's a comfortable, it's a like, sitting out enjoying the sun, and knowing that there's not another thing showing up. It's like you actually get to settle.
Mhm.
And that's like the new, as we enter July, that's more of the vibe going in, that you don't have to be on high alert anymore. Like the nervous system settles. And so, you mentioned dates or whatever, it does seem to involve some other person that you can reflect your feelings to with. I don't know what verbs I'm using here. It's that balanced mirror kind of energy. It's like, oh, it's not like I all of a sudden. It's like we.
Right.
Aw. Like it has that kind of a vibe to it. Like, yeah.
And on a more practical interpretation, I think this is an invitation to, if you are doing something in just in general in your life, whether it's a project or cleaning the house,
Mm.
this is this is a great energy to check in with yourself. Do I want to do this or not? Right? So if you are working on a project at a job or something and you're like, "Ah, I don't want to do this. Like my every part of my body is rejecting this." You want to listen to that. And you wanna get curious as to, okay, why not? Is this not aligned with me anymore? Blah, blah, blah. If this
Mhm.
is even more mundane, I don't wanna clean the house, like, I'd rather be doing something else. Maybe that means that, yeah, you wanna enjoy yourself. Can you delegate? Can you get someone to help you? So, when we're talking about how your body's responding to your life, this is a great aspect that is not just for that weekend, it's really the week leading up to the 28th and even the week after that. So pay attention to that because I think both Cancer and Taurus are very receptive energies. So you have to be a lot more present. You have to be willing to move a lot more slowly to see how your body is responding to your life.
Yeah,
And
I
then
mean, the 10 of cups it is, you say receptive, it is a very receptive kind of card, and it is like the arrival at a point. It's a 10, so it's like nines, which we had a little bit while, a while back there, the abundance card, which for the first time kind of has a bit of a negative connotation. When we get to the 10, it's like the end,
Mm,
which is a new beginning, because it's, we've talked about it before, like that happily ever after thing in any story, fairy tale, and then nobody ever tells you about, who's taking out the garbage and who has to clean up and
right.
all that. What does happily ever after look like? And so, those mundane tasks in that happily ever after, there's an exercise that we do sometimes that's my list and the universe's list,
Mm,
list. So you could call it God's list or whatever, however it was. And I can't remember the origin of it initially, but it's gone around in the, law of attraction and manifesting, whatever. We can be really honest about the things that we want to do and the things we don't want to do. Like if you
right.
don't like ironing, you don't have to feel like a bad human being because you don't like ironing. Like you can go, that's in the universe's list. Somehow, some way, I'm going to let the universe deal with that. And I'm going to focus on all these other tasks. And some of them might be boring and mundane. Like most of the stuff we have to do can be boring and mundane, but you can do something else at the same time. But like you might be like, but ironing is not my thing, but it might be somebody else's thing and they can do that for you, or whatever. You can pay somebody to do it or whatever. It's like it's to get out of that space of like, I have to do that. I'm irresponsible if I don't do the things. We
Hmm.
like, who says who?
Right, right. And the says who is usually, very Saturnian. They're very Saturnian themes. It's a very Saturnian theme. And so on June 29th, we have Saturn going retrograde, actually stationing retrograde and remaining retrograde till November 15th. So well into close to the end of the year. And so I think that Saturn retrograde in Pisces serves for great introspection. We had we've had a Saturn retrograde in Pisces before, which was last year around the same time. So we have some experience with it. But
Mhm.
think about everything that you have done, built, committed to the first 6 months of 2024. And Saturn retrograde is going to bring a lot of opportunity to reconsider a lot of those things, asking yourself, like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And, Saturn in the zodiac is so much about self responsibility, and that can sound really heavy and harsh, and because I think we have a certain idea of responsibility. But responsibility really is also you understanding that you get to give yourself the permission to do and not do the things that you want to do and not do, right? You still get to you still have to show up for certain things, but the way that you do them, and you're the only one who gets to choose. You get to
Yeah.
choose how you do things. Um, Saturn retrograde in Pisces, I think also because it's Pisces, I think it's going to come with some endings. Um, because we also have, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I think this has a lot to do with it. We have a full moon in Pisces, which is an eclipse in September. Um, we have an eclipse which represents endings in the last sign of the zodiac, while Saturn is retrograde in Pisces at that time. And I think honestly, from this point up until September, there's kind of a buildup to that. There's a sense something is ending, something fundamental, structural, and you can think about that at a collective level, and you can think about it in an individual level.
Yeah, it's good to focus on that because we have a major. And the major arcana cards are, think of higher arcing life lessons or soul lessons or collective processes. And so the Hierophant is the higher levels of everything, really. So if it's relationships, it's like really the special high quality relationships or taking relationships to another level. If it's education, it's like furthering your education, getting going from high school to university, or university to a master's or to a PhD or whatever. It's like that kind of stuff. It's leveling up on everything, but it's also on a spiritual level. And we've got the infinity symbol, we've got this like connection to the source, to divine, whatever, accessing all of the higher realms of everything. And
Mhm.
so this Hierophant is, again, it's not like a short-term thing, but it's like, okay, you were dealing with all that mundane stuff, and the bills and the tasks and the groups and the people and the whatever. And here we get to this space, okay, 10 of Cups, you can relax a little bit, but then it's like, hey, guess what? You didn't even notice that you leveled up. You
Mhm.
leveled up. Like, there you go. Welcome to July. You're going to move into that space, and it's going to be like, it's not that everything's easy when you level up, but it's like you grew. You actually grew from there to there, and that carries over. So it's interesting that full moon in Pisces with an eclipse in September, this feels very much like that. So I'd be curious to also see what cards come up around that at that time, because it is very much like a soul evolution where you begin to go, oh, that's why. Oh, that's why I picked that. Oh, that's why that got removed. Oh, that's why I got redirected. Aha. And it's less about the things and more about the higher self, the higher perspective, and not in a boring, like, often I think people feel that when they go into those like more spiritual spaces and whatever, that they leave all of the fun stuff behind, not realizing that that's a very egotistical kind of construct. That
Right.
high elevation place is like fun and playful and full of laughs and silly. It's very much that Page of Cups feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what we're being invited to do. I think we're being invited to understand that we get to experience joy and fun while we're living this life, and that is probably the way that we want to approach things. I mean, if you're thinking about this from the perspective of, law of attraction and manifesting,
Yeah.
you attract and manifest more when you are in a state of joy and play.
Yeah, it's not your environment. I hammer this into people's heads at their dismay, I'm sure. It's your attitude that creates the reality, not the reality that creates the attitude.
Mm.
So if you're going to continue to postpone your happiness until, then
Mhm.
you'll never be happy, because the things will never align the way you want. So you have to make a conscious choice to choose to be happy while sitting in the middle of a pile of crap.
Right. Yes.
You do. Yeah.
I think so much of what's happening in Pisces is again just the call to stop identifying so much with this human 3D reality and start identifying more with our imagination,
Yeah.
because it is in our imagination where we create.
Hmm.
So if we are in our imagination creating, we know that we are creating what's meant to eventually come in this 3D reality. So flipping that script, the change in perspective and perception, that's what it is. That is, the upgrade in technology. Again, air energy represents the upgrade in technology, and it's very easy to see. AI is coming for us. Um, no, it's the upgrade in the technology of how your mind works and how it actually creates your life.
Yeah.
Flip the script. And the reason that some things are not coming to fruition now is because you're still functioning under that old programming.
Hmm. I just pulled a card from another deck,
Yeah.
which I do, when we do one-on-one readings, I usually use this deck, and it sort of acts as a headline for the whole thing. So it's instincts. Okay.
Hmm.
And a lot of people, I think, are disconnected from their instincts, because their instincts have been modified through conditioning. They're not really their instincts. So they might say, well, I don't even know what my instincts are. I don't know what my gut feelings are. It's because everything I ever did was wrong. So I have no clue. So it's an invitation to reconnect to your instincts. So it says, follow your natural instincts. You are making the current issue more complicated than it needs to be. Trust in the universe. Allow your intuition to guide you. You are always safe. Like, seriously, very funny. Yeah. If anybody wants to screenshot that for themselves to remind themselves with, there you go.
Oh, I love this.
You can't make it up. It's just, how it happens.
Right.
Yes. So, yeah, we've got a wonderful rest of the month of June. And, hopefully we will, get the July one out there for July 1st this time. Sorry.
Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will catch you in July.
Yes, we will.
Take care.